Good afternoon, ladies and gents. I hope you're all having a good day today, just like I am having a good day. And in this episode, I would like to talk about 5 fascinating facts about the Swedish language. And before I continue this video, for those of you who are new to my channel or new to my video, I've been studying Swedish now for quite some time, so in particular 6 months now. I guess it's not that long ago, but for some of you it might be, a long time already, just like for me in some ways. But in general, when you learn a new language, you don't just learn the language per se. You also learn the culture, you learn the customs, you learn the traditions of that country or that language that you're learning, the language of the country that you're learning basically. And I've discovered a few things that are, in my opinion, quite fascinating and quite interesting to share with some of you who are also studying Swedish per chance. And I guess I wouldn't say that I'm endorsing Sweden. I'm not endorsing the Swedish language, although it might sound like it might appear as though I am some kind of ambassador for Sweden, but I'm in no way any ambassador or any endorser whatsoever. This is my personal preference, my personal choice to study Swedish, and I guess I just encourage people to learn language in general. Also, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with your friends and loved ones if you like to watch more content like those. So I guess I'll just get right straight into it. I'll start with the first fact and then go on with the second, third, fourth, and fifth. So the first one that I find in particular interesting is that the Swedish language has a very sing-song quality. So what do I mean by this sing-song quality? When you ever go to Sweden or you listen to a Swedish person talking, they can even speak in English if they're from Sweden. Regardless what language they speak, they will always talk in a very melodic sing-song quality language. So they always tend to speak in a way that they would end the phrase on a high note rather than a low note, low pitch. So you rarely see that in any other country, be it in Germany, in Switzerland, in Austria, in the Slavic countries. It's mostly in the Scandinavian countries that you would hear people speak on a high pitch, so to speak. So they kind of start high, they go low, they go back high again, they go low, and then in the end they end the sentence, the phrase, the paragraph with a high note, so to speak. And that's not just in Sweden, but that's also in Norway, in Denmark, and I have to say Finland, I'm not too sure about that. I don't think they do that. And Iceland, I also don't know in particular. It's a little bit different. They're a bit more isolated, and also it's kind of interesting that Finnish is a Scandinavian country, but they in no way belong to the Scandinavian, let's say, the vibe of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. I guess those 3 countries are kind of the countries that people view as mostly Scandinavian. But either ways, I found it very interesting to listen to the people in Sweden who talk like that. And for those of you who are going to Scandinavia, or in Sweden in that case, you will most likely encounter those kind of conversations. Fascinating fact number 2. Swedish language has influenced the English language quite a bit with a lot of their Swedish words. So for example, the word ombudsman, sauna, smorgasbord, all those words that we use in English or that we think were English in some ways are actually Swedish. And there are most likely more words than just the 3 words that I just mentioned. Those were just examples. But Swedish language historically has influenced the English language a lot because of the wars that they've had with the Englishmen in the past, especially during the Viking Age. Because as for some of you who are interested in the Viking Age history, the Vikings have raided England many times, from starting all the way down south, all the way to the north of England. I think they even went to Scotland and Ireland. They had those expeditions. They also went to Iceland and Greenland and all these other areas in the west throughout the Viking Age time. And of course, when they were visiting meaning raiding England and Scotland and all these countries, they of course mingled with a lot of the locals in England and Scotland and Ireland. And of course, some of the words were, transitioned or transferred over and vice versa. They exchanged some vocabulary there. And of course, some words stuck around for a long time. And those are some of the words that we use today. So hence, Swedish has influenced a lot of English words and vice versa. So if you ever hear a word that might sound very similar or the other way around, this is because of the historical situation that the Swedes or the Vikings had with the British people in the past. Fascinating fact number 3. Now, I'm pretty sure that a lot of people know this fact, or maybe not, but I think it's still worth sharing it with you. But Swedish is not the only official language in one country, so in Sweden. The Swedish is also the official language in Finland, which is actually the second official language in Finland. So historically, once again, Sweden owned Finland for a very long time, just like most parts of Estonia and other regions in Norway and Denmark. And well, it's a long history, but now regarding Finland was part of the Swedish kingdom for a long time. And Swedish people also lived in Finland for a long time as well, and in Estonia and some parts of Estonia, mostly in some islands. And after Sweden gave up Finland, Finland then went to Russia for quite some time. They only gained their independence later on in the 20th century. And Sweden, of course, or the Swedish influence or the Swedish culture, the Swedish language stuck around in Finland as well. So there was a big minority, so to speak, in Finland that spoke Swedish, or that were basically Swedish people. And so eventually the Swedish language became an official language, an official government language in Finland. And I think right now, as of today, it's not that many people who speak Swedish in Finland. If I understand correctly, it's maybe like 200,000 people, 250,000 people who speak Swedish in Finland. Of course, they also study Swedish in school, or at least they offer as a facultative language or the facultative course in Finland. But overall, Swedish is not that, let's say, popular anymore as it used to be in Finland. So of course, logically, Finnish is the main language, and after that is also probably Russian, because Russia is right next to Finland, and there are a lot of Russians who immigrated to Finland over time, and hence Russian is also a very prominent language in Finland, aside from Swedish and a few other minority languages. Fascinating fact number 4 is actually something interesting that I discovered just recently, and the Swedish language doesn't really use the formal you anymore. So for example, like how you would approach a person that you don't know or at work and you want to be polite, you usually say you. So in English it's a little bit tricky because we say you for informal and for formal purposes. But I can give you another example in French or in German. So in French, for example, if you want to approach a person that you don't know in a formal way, you would say vous. So vous êtes, vous avez, like you have, you are. In German, we have the same thing, but with Sie. So Sie haben, Sie sind. If you are informal, you would say du in German. So du bist, du hast, etc. And the same thing in French. It's tu, tu as, tu es, etc., etc. In Swedish, we have the ni and du. So du is informal and ni is formal. The ni är or du är, those are some of the ways that you can approach a person. But in Sweden, if I remember correctly, they actually did have some kind of language reformation just recently in the 60s or 70s. You can definitely search it up. They had this kind of idea that from now on, we would have only an informal you culture in Sweden to kind of, I guess the idea was to bond people, to get people, become closer with one another, to not feel so formal, kind of this kind of culture in some way, shape or form. And this is very common at work or, at home especially, or in any environment, in any institution where you are very close with your coworkers, with your friends, and so on and so forth, where you don't have to be so formal. And this was kind of the idea in Sweden for quite some time. And most of the times they now only use du. So when you're in Sweden, you can of course say ni, like in a formal way, you. But it's not the worst, to say you in an informal way. They will be definitely happy. They won't look down on you for that. They're not gonna correct you. But of course, it's very situative. You have to look at the person. If the person looks like he wants or demands high respect, then it's maybe better not use the informal you. So you have to look at it from a very personal and subjective standpoint. Look at it from situation to situation, but overall, most people accept an informal you. And the last fact, fascinating fact number 5, is actually, well, I wouldn't say that fascinating anymore, but I guess for those of you who are maybe, again, new to this channel, Swedish language is actually a very popular second language to learn for many English-speaking people. So, and also the FSI, which is an institution that grades the difficulty of languages, the FSI grades it as category number 1, which means that it takes about 24 weeks or 750 hours to learn, respectively master the Swedish language. Now, okay, I'm very careful with the word mastering the language, because I think, as far as I understand, they simply mean to become fluent in that language. So at a basic level, to understand and to communicate in that language. To master that language, I'm pretty sure it takes a bit longer, because you have to actually master the grammar, you have to master basically everything that surrounds the Swedish language. So you have to also master the literature and so on and so forth. But I think, from what I understand, it's simply more like, I guess, B2 level, to communicate confidently in that language and to understand the people, to maybe understand the different dialects more, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think overall, whenever you learn a language, whatever language it may be, each language has a deep, unique history and things that only belong to them. So there are, some words that you just can't translate into your own native language. There are some things that you just won't understand or try to understand because it's only theirs. Like, some things will just always be Swedish, some things will always be Norwegian, some things will always be English, and so on and so forth. And I think when you learn the language, you're not just learning the language, you're also learning a lot of things about the people who speak that language. So the natives of Sweden, the Swedish people, you learn about the culture, you learn about the food, you learn about the mentality, you learn about all sorts of things that involve Sweden, for that sake. And I think it's very nice to learn not just about the language, but I also think that all of these things kind of come along when you're learning a language. It's very hard to just individually or separately learn the language without also learning about the culture. And I think this is also one thing that I'm pretty sure I told you about learning French in Switzerland. And this is maybe one big problem here, that we don't learn about the French culture. We don't learn about the French customs and the French mentality. We are only learning about the French language. We only have to learn the language. And I think that's also one difficulty for many people, or at least for me, is that I also want to learn about the country. I want to learn about the people, the food, the customs, etc., which would then ease the process of learning the language, because then you become more immersed in that country, in that language. So I think that's very beneficial for everyone who are learning languages. You learn about the country, and yeah, I think that wraps up the video for today. And I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope you are learning a language. I hope you are doing well overall. And as always, make sure to subscribe, to share this video with your friends and loved ones. And as always, I'll see you in the next video. Have a nice day.